Hey everyone, welcome to our final video about water chemistry and how it influences life. In this video, we're going to talk about some chemical and physical properties of water that help it with doing metabolism inside of our living cells. We're going to talk about how water is a solvent and can dissolve chemicals, minerals, and nutrients that are used to support life. And we're also going to talk about how water is a thermal regulator for living things. Water's polarity and mixtures. Well, water's polar, like we've talked about before. The positive hydrogen end and the negative oxygen end create an uneven distribution of charge and make that water polar. And because water is polar, it has some different ways that it does mixtures. Here you see two mixtures. One of them, the sugar going into the water, is a solution. That's called a solution because water is actually able to dissolve the sugar. The water is a polar molecule, and sugar is also polar. So they can be dissolved together. Like dissolves like in that situation. The next thing you see is some salad dressing, and you see some oil and maybe some water with maybe some seasoning mixed together. And that creates what we call a suspension. When something cannot dissolve in water, it forms a suspension. And no matter how long you shake that bottle of salad dressing, eventually it's going to separate back out into a water layer and an oil layer, and it cannot end up permanently dissolved. So when like dissolves like, you make a solution, and if nothing can dissolve permanently in that mixture, it's a suspension. In solutions, there are two parts, the solute and the solvent. I like to remember it by saying, you dissolve the solute into the solvent. So the solute is the substance that is being dissolved. It could be sugar, salt, honey, any type of substance that's about to be dissolved would be the solute. And it's going to be dissolved into a solvent, which is a substance that's doing the dissolving. And water is considered to be a universal solvent because it can dissolve many different things. Who cares? Why is solubility important to living things and to cells? Well, about 2/3 of your cell is made up of water, and many reactions take place at any given time within your cells. And because many of those different reactants in those reactions, or materials that are going to have a chemical reaction, can dissolve in water, they can easily be moved into or out of your cell and then moved around within your cell. Also, waste products from those reactions can easily be removed because those waste products can most likely dissolve in our universal solvent of water and be removed from the cell pretty easily. Next up, we're talking about pH, which is chemical property of water and other liquids. And pH is talking about how acidic or how basic a substance is. It's based on the concentration of hydrogen ions in a solution. And if there is a really high pH, higher than 7, anywhere between 7 and 14, it is a basic liquid or a base. Things like ammonia or drain cleaner or bleach are all considered to be bases. So if you're working with a cleaning product, most likely using a base. A pH of 7 is considered neutral, like a plain glass of water would be neutral. Blood is close to neutral. It's a pH of about 7.4. If you have a low pH, if it's lower than 7, down all the way to 0, that means that it is an acid. And that could be things like lemon juice, coffee, soda, and even battery acid or hydrochloric acid. You can measure that using a probe, like you're seeing here in this bottom picture, or by using litmus paper, which is kind of an old-fashioned way of measuring pH. But based on pH, you can see if what you're working with is an acid, a base, or neutral. Who cares about pH? Well, pH matters a lot because the pH allows certain enzymes in our body to work in certain places. For example, we have enzymes which speed up reactions and help break down food in all different parts of our digestive system. In our mouth, we have to have a neutral type of pH because the enzymes that work in our mouth only work at a neutral pH. So our saliva or our spit has a pH of between 6.5 and 7.5. On the contrary, our stomachs are very acidic. a pH of 1.5 to 4.0. So very, very, very acidic stomachs. And the reason why our stomachs are so acidic is that the enzymes that help break down food in our stomachs require an acidic pH in order to work. They just won't work if the pH is neutral or basic. So enzymes can only do their jobs at certain pHs. So we care about the pH of the different liquids in our body. Water and temperature. Now, there's several different important things to think about when we're talking about water and temperature. Water absorbs heat when it evaporates. Water is less dense in a frozen state, and water has a high heat capacity. So, why is evaporation important to living things? Well, when water evaporates, it carries away heat energy, leaving a cooler surface behind. So when you work out and you get all sweaty, that sweat is actually a great thing because that sweat is going to evaporate and it's going to leave your skin feeling cooler because it carried heat energy away. The same thing happens from a dog's tongue when it's panting and cools the dog down. All right, water, when it's in a solid state, is frozen and it's less dense than when it's in a liquid state. So if you look at that picture, you can see that ice, water molecules, are actually more spread out. They have a more rigid structure and they're less dense than the liquid, which has water molecules much closer and packed together. So solid ice is less dense than liquid water. Why does that matter? Who cares? Well, a lot of fish really care about this one. Less dense ice floats to the top of the water, and that frozen layer of ice on top of a pond can insulate the liquid water that's below. That means that the liquid water will stay slightly warmer and not freeze solid. Here's a little video to help you remember this. This cat's walking on frozen ice on top of a little pond, but down below it, you can see fish swimming around. The fish are not frozen. The water at the bottom of the pond is liquid because of that insulating layer on top. So this pond is kind of funny. Those fish are not going to be attacked by the cat. The layer of ice at the top not only protects the fish from the cat, but also protects the fish from the cold temperatures above and allows them to keep swimming through liquid water. All right, last but not least, we're going to talk about water's high heat capacity. What that means is it takes a ton of energy to change the temperature of water. For just 1 gram of water to increase by 1 degrees Celsius, it takes a calorie. Who cares? Why does high heat capacity matter to living things? Well, there's 2 reasons. One is oceans and ponds and other bodies of water. If you've gone to the beach, you've probably run across the sand to get to the water because that sand gets really, really, really hot and can burn your feet. Well, sand has a low heat capacity, meaning that when the sun shines on it, it heats up pretty quickly and can burn you. But water has a high heat capacity. It takes a lot more energy to heat up the water of the ocean or a pond or a river, and so it stays nice and cool even in the summertime. So a lot of living things that live in the water depend on this high heat capacity of water in order to survive and not boil in the summer. Next, it also allows our bodies to do this thing called homeostasis, which means maintaining a certain balance of temperature. You know, when you take your temperature, that it should be about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And the fact that you have so much water, like 60 or 65% of your body is water, allows your body to maintain that temperature. Think of otherwise, if you were outside getting a suntan and that sun was beaming on your body, if your water in all of your cells had a low heat capacity, you would start to get really hot and boil. But your body is mostly made of water and your cells are mostly made of water. And because water has a high heat capacity, it would take a ton of energy to make your body actually heat up or to become feverish. So that fact that you have a lot of water in your body helps you maintain your body temperature. Thanks so much for listening to this video about properties of water. I hope you've enjoyed learning about it.